All right. Hey guys, I'm gonna go over tickers for today. It's 11/7/2024, and yeah, I'll cover the stuff I did trade today, the stuff I could have traded today, stuff I didn't trade today, and why I didn't trade it, and all the fun gappers and everything like that. Starting with probably gonna go with I guess might as well start with WeBuy, huh? They were the leader today. Put these guys up here. These guys were actually the only trade I ended up actually taking on my account. And let me get rid of some of these drawings. Yeah, so pretty big gap this morning. They gapped like 170% or something like this, something like that. And they did have some dilution below the opening price. Like we opened over here at around like 30 cents ish. And I do believe they had, yeah, they had these convertible notes a little bit underneath us. And aside from that, not a whole lot of dilution, but this is enough to like assume dilution would be in play. Interestingly high float on this, but with the behavior of the price action in the pre-market, this was like well inside my wheelhouse, and yeah, fundamentally like everything there was like needed for this to be a good short. Yeah, so into the start of the day, I was looking for some kind of like pre-market high break and then potentially take a short, although that was not at all what ended up happening here actually. So I was expecting, say, like we open here and we like shoot up and then go down or something like that. But yeah, we ended up going down immediately. And I guess in hindsight, this is not too unexpected given the way the pre-market shook out. Like we had a lot of strength coming in right over here in this area. And sometimes what'll happen is if there's a lot of pre-market strength and we get a good rejection off of that pre-market strength, it'll continue into the open. And this could have just been a full fade. But that's not actually, of course, a sign of what happening here. We got over to VWAP and it ended up shooting upwards. And I actually ended up taking this thing to the long side because of the way it ended panning out and setting up. So if I want to play like longs near the open, which I will do sometimes, it's not super common, but I will do it sometimes. I want to get like a good risk to reward to pre-market high, and I want to be entering on an asset that I see has increasing volume, because what will happen quite often is like once you get one liquidity grab or something, the volume will just decay for the rest of the day, and you won't ever get what you need in order to squeeze back to pre-market high, barring like special circumstances where a bunch of shorts suddenly get squeezed out because of some technical pattern that appears later in the day. So um, what ended up happening here, of course, was this volume is correct here. What we ended up shooting down, hit VWAP. Volume goes down a little bit here. We start to climb, and when we break over here, this is basically a knife. We ended up breaking into a knife on higher volume, and this was enough to get me interested in a long thesis. And because we hadn't broken pre-market high yet, and bouncing off of VWAP when we had this good structure right here is probably reason to believe that there's desire for some kind of liquidity grab at pre-market high. So, yeah, so I was interested in taking a long here. I didn't immediately long right away, even though I was really convinced at this point that pre-market high would get broken at some point, because we were really, really far away from the only known intraday support level. And say longing up here, if I end up needing to have my risk like way down here or something like this, then I'm not getting good risk reward, even if I get like a decent in range entry like this. And usually when I get an average, and you'll see I get averages like up here because I want to enter on the break. So yeah, so like there was absolutely no way I was getting good risk reward for this trade, and a lot of time these long setups don't really offer a high win rate anyways. So you need to have a good risk reward to compensate for that. So yeah, so right away I wasn't too interested, and then we started to tighten up, and I started to get a little bit more interested actually in the idea, because there was a possibility there was a possibility I could manage my risk off of these lows here, and that's eventually what I ended up being able to do, because I'm going to pull up a lower time frame chart here, a 7-minute chart, to give you an idea of what I saw. It's a little bit easier to explain the action on the tape if you guys can see the individual bars on a lower time frame, because this isn't really too clear on the 1-minute chart. So obviously there's a bit of a wedged pattern forming right here, and I'll play wedges to the long side, absolutely, but to play the wedge against the dilutive overall thesis, you need to first have some kind of indicator that this is gonna prevail over incoming bag holders or potentially even incoming dilution. And the best way of doing that is usually seeing a knife get placed and then entering. And there's many ways that this can form. The way that ended up happening here was super subtle, but I ended up seeing it and it ended up really working in my favor. I got the entry like basically perfectly because of this. Was we're wedging out, we wedge out, and over here we break this like exactly 33 cents level, which is tapped twice. And then over here, I can't remember if there was a big seller on the tape here or on the level 2, or if we were just having trouble crossing that because of incoming selling pressure. I don't know, but what ended up happening was we ended up breaking it over here, and we knifed off of this almost immediately, as indicated by the higher volume on this red candle here. And this gave me a good idea that it would be safe to take this wedge outright, because if this wedge was going to fail, this knife here, like this strong red candle where we broke, liquidity grabbed, and saw selling pressure would seal the deal, and we would fade back to VWAP. We would break the technical pattern, and that's it. But that is not what ended up happening here. So I ended up entering like right here off of this big candle. So I guess I'll show you the execution. Yeah, so I ended up getting it right here, like right over here. Watched the tape as well for green incoming on the tape as well. So I got the execution like right at the break and got basically all the size I needed right there. So now there was a risk with this trade that we would again break this knife, and then we would again liquidity grab here off of this higher level, which was visible on the 1-minute chart. So there was a chance that we liquidity grabbed off of this, but I was considering the overall scenario we were in here. We cleared a knife already, you know, like, and I decided at the very least it was worth the risk at this point, because I could easily position risk now off of, like, say, this low right here. This is exactly what I did. I literally positioned risk off of the bottom of the red knife, and that was tight enough at this point that I was able to like stack RR as this move happened. So it was, in my opinion, it was worth the risk. You always risk the knife whenever you're taking a long setup into any kind of swing high. You're always risking the knife. But if you can be reasonably sure that the impulse is going to take you in the right direction, at least in the short term, it can be worth it if everything else in the thesis lines up to a possible long side play. So yeah. And I guess I show my exits here as well. Exited once into pre-market high, basically. I was looking to take off after we started showing a little weakness here, and then exited over here as we got overextended and closed out basically the rest of my position on a break of a prior bar high. And this was a little bit interesting. This is kind of like what we had on Foxo yesterday, where we had this like hyper overextended move and then curled around and put in a second leg almost immediately that a second time ended up squeezing out a bunch of people. So yeah, very interesting. Maybe this is something that I'm not too used to seeing, because it tends to occur on floats that don't typically have this kind of crazy manipulation. I don't really know, but like, yeah, I'm not too used to seeing this like two-legged hyper squeeze. Like usually it's a one and done kind of thing, and yeah, we ended up going twice here. This third time we didn't get as many stop outs. I was looking for some kind of double top play here, but I was considering taking it off of like a prior bar low situation, and this broke down, then it went up. So we never ended up breaking any prior bar lows until we were like all the way up here, and at that point we had cleared the double top, so it didn't end up working out. So I didn't end up taking this trade here. I guess there was no trade for me to take there, but the top, of course, was in right there. And yeah, we just faded for the rest of the day on this thing, basically. So yeah, and I don't recall seeing anything particularly crazy on the level 2, if I believe. What did we have going on? I think there was some interaction occurring here at like the 42-cent area, I believe. There was, if I recall correctly, there was it was like a really big buyer, a really big seller there that was like perpetually holding price. And yeah, there was a really big buyer here, hidden buyer holding price at 42. And this whole move was like this, actually. I remember now how it was. Like, the reason why we had all these even lows was because there was some hidden buyer who was just like absorbing size like most of the entire way on this first leg. I stopped watching the tape into the second leg, but on this first leg, because I was invested to the long side, I was watching the tape and at level 2, and yeah, we had him like stacking here, and then we stacked at 42, I remember, and when he stacked at 42, he broke right here, and I didn't take size off into this, I believe, or no, I took size off of into this break here. We reclaimed, and I thought of even adding some of my size back in on the long when we reclaimed here, depending on what the response was going to be, like if he reloaded at the 42-cent level or not. And I remember right here he did hold 42 cents for a little while, but he broke very quickly, so I didn't end up ever re-adding size here. And I'm guessing, of course, that's probably why we saw short-term fade, but yeah, this thing was like crazy manipulated, so it eventually ended pushing back up again. So yeah, and that's about it. Unfortunately, this thing didn't really see long action into the afternoon. I would have indeed been interested in playing long patterns on this ticker as the day progressed, like considering we had made it above the convertible note price and we stayed up there for a long time. There wasn't really a whole lot else stopping this thing from continuing to go if that alone wasn't going to be sufficient to pull this thing down. So, and we didn't really get any overextension on this move either. Like, yeah, we had a couple of like very dilutive candles up here, big knife here as well, but yeah, nothing super overextended. The top seemed somewhat arbitrary from my perspective on this one, I'm not gonna lie. Of course, then the next best thing for playing the short side would have been, of course, the trendline break somewhere in this area right here, and that's when you get the full fade going on. But I don't really play this break right now, although I do study this pattern sometimes, and it can be good, but I won't play it if it only does two legs up. If this third leg breaks higher, then I'll play it. But yeah, so that's what we buy. Guess we'll go over some of the other tickers that are less exciting today. ATCH was, this thing was like near open or something like that. Well, this thing broke higher. Yeah. NYC, so my volume data is not exactly correct on here, but it doesn't really matter too much. This thing had decent volume today, and broke the pre-market high, didn't break the post-market high, didn't really have a big enough gap for me to be looking to just outright short the pre-market high, and I would have been looking for a break of post-market high anyways. So yeah, did not end up trading this thing. Didn't really see anything out of this. It was a high spike, one and done. End of story. I remember this thing had a lot of dilution or something like that. It was good for shorts as well. MDJH. This one was also a die near open. I know some people who ended up playing this in pre-market. We had a real nice double top, like right up here after a big up move. So like it was just straight down after that. So yeah, and if you tried to hit this, I mean, like, you could have tried to hit it near open, but like this thing was so, like, we were so far off the highs, that, like, I think the fade was likely, but this was an in range sell if you tried to short here. So you need to have some higher averages to bring your average up, I think. So this was just nobody was getting into this, I think, in the intraday. Maybe like the only thing that you could have done was possibly played this right here. When it comes to these like really low priced stocks, like this is a good, the like playing these breakdown like lines is it tends to be good win rate, good risk to reward. But when you're playing a price level like this, like in the like below like 50 cents ish, it's really expensive to play these because you end up having like tight risk, and that's how you end up making money. But so you end up needing to load down like quite a lot of shares that are going to eat up that where the commissions eat up your profits. So I didn't actually even see this live, but I was focusing on other stuff. But I wouldn't have played this again anyways because of that stock price. So, and then there was CYN. These guys attracted my attention in the market hours, but they ended or in the pre-market, even though they ended up fading quite hard because they were holding up this support level, which was a previous pre-market high for a little move that they did a while back. And yeah, I was under the impression that this thing might actually do a decently big move, actually, because they were one of the few stocks we had today that had a really low float going on, and they had decent pre-market volume. They had ATM, and I guess just the ATM. I guess it got a pipe too, but no chance anyone's exercising at that price. So they had the ATM going, and CYN has done big moves in the past. So they were definitely a candidate, but we faded right off of the open to off of, I guess, a liquidity grab off of this high right here, something like that. It would have been nice to see maybe this level or something, but yeah, this thing was just doomed from the start, and again, did not end up playing this. So yeah, the morning was pretty dry. It was just really WBUY, and into the midday, I guess we did have some other stuff as well. There was CELU, and there was another one I played too. Cover ECELU first. So CELU, these guys were interesting. We did like a bit of a afternoon parabolic on this thing, and yeah, I did not end up trading this. I was around for it to happen, but I'm usually wary about halt interactions on parabolic moves, and there wasn't a really good way to position risk on this parabolic, so I didn't end up playing it. It was ETB though. That's always nice, and I wasn't very firm about trying to short this guy anyways because it didn't have like we have some upward walks on this stock on multiple times a day. We have an upwards or multiple times a day we had an upwards walk over here, and these guys did have dilution, but it wasn't clear if they were planning to exercise into a move like this, even though they had and like they like don't have a lot of days where they just have like heavy volume pumps either. It was just this year, and this really wasn't a whole lot. So lacking information on this thing quite significantly, and the news that this stock had was also it was not to be disregarded either. It was something kind of like an earnings related move as well, and some of this is fluff, like the net sales guidance increased like a couple $1 million, but they also reported like positive net sales and stuff like this as well in here. So it was a really iffy back and forth thing for me, and the time of day as well played into this, and yeah, like I said, no pump history either. So I was of the opinion that we could see a lot more range on this, or potentially just see some sideways action up here, even though it went parabolic at first. So I wasn't super keen on trading this, although if something goes parabolic, especially if it's going like multiple hundreds of percent, it does not matter if the company is legit and somehow reporting like really good numbers. It's unwarranted. So I was still willing to play this. At the end of the day, though, I didn't end up getting any setup. So I didn't end up trading it. And the reason why was because we ended up halting up here, and then opened out of the halt here, and realistically your only option to short here was right here on this candle, or right here on this candle somewhere, and I guess I didn't clue in fast enough, especially if you want high day risk, right? And usually I try and aim for about like 2R to VWAP. Like if you wanted like the high day risk and you wanted 2R to VWAP, you needed like 447 ish or something like that. And We did come back on over here to retest it, but the EV is very different if you're taking this trade on the backside versus the front, especially if something is super parabolic like this. Like reclaims like these are not typical. So I did not end up taking it on backside, even though I did have the chance to. And yeah, that's really about it with this. I'm not super opinionated about this at the moment. We'll see where it ends up tomorrow. It's possible this thing will continue to have some action. Just a very weird move in many ways. So I wasn't super keen on it, especially since it was like 1:30 in the afternoon at that point, and I was sitting a little bit up in profits, and I wasn't really like looking to take any weird plays for no reason at the end of the day. So, yep. And the only other thing was NMHI. This was the other thing on my scanner for most of the day. Or on my screen for most of the day. Very overextended move here. Although a very simple play for me as well. Once we get a certain amount of overextension, I have a special indicator I use to gauge overextension as a function of the second derivative of the EMA of EMAs or VWAP, and once we start to get that overextension profile, I have a calibrate for stocks of this size. And once that happens, once we had this slam down rejection at the high, I was just looking at a drop of prior bar lows. And the executions are on here because I couldn't, I was having some trouble getting low case in my broker. Like not like actually I couldn't get the low case, just like a technical issue. And I didn't end up getting to trade it. So instead I just threw down some shares on here just to show what the position I would have normally taken was. But obviously this doesn't count towards my P&L or anything like that. So anyways, but what it would have been here would have been like, here's the prior bar low entries, and then take off some size into VWAP, take off some size into prior major swing high on the daily, and then took off the last little bit of my size into 0.2. And this was pretty straightforward. This is a little bit more like what I'd hope to see from a parabolic, where the parabolic levels, like if we, like, let's say for instance that these are like our highs, right? If you ever like break higher significantly like this and like this over here, this is overextension, technical overextension, right? Price should never increase in speed. This is unhealthy price action. And these levels, this area up here that is above the line for the highs, this area should never get retested if this really is healthy overextension. This is just all illegal price action right here. So any kind of entry up in this area, assuming time doesn't correct it upwards, because this will increase higher as time goes on. Assuming time doesn't correct it upwards, getting entries in this area are like almost always positive EV. So, and of course, like, I just like to go back to CELU for a second. A lot of this access, like basically everything up here, and the fact that we were able to retest this, just it made it dubious to me. And yeah, just gonna go back to this guy. And over here, not crazy price action, pretty straightforward. I was actually thinking about re-adding this size into 3.5, which the reason why I was going to add into 3.5 was, I'm going to open this thing up on the lower time frame. There wasn't a whole lot going for us in terms of like where liquidity could be. This move was too strong to the downside, so we necessarily had to come back up, take some liquidity before going lower, and that's probably a lot of why we ended up staying here. There was a pretty active guy at 0.28 this whole way through. Like, I think I saw at most 100,000 shares on the bid, which at this for stock at this price, it's not crazy, but it was, I guess it ended up causing a holdup with the lower volume conditions once we were on the backside here. So, but before that ended up becoming a major piece of the puzzle, I just normally would take size off at VWAP, and I was kind of hoping to recycle it a little bit higher. And my original recycle targets were like this low here and this little swing high here. And basically this thing here, these all I expected to have an interaction. So I was looking to re-add the size up here at like 355, probably expecting some kind of reaction there. And that did not end up happening, so I didn't end up ever re-adding the size, although I think I should have expected that based on the way this played out, because we ended up going down here, we found the support, we broke this over here, and we break down, and once we break this and we break down, the place to grab liquidity off of isn't up here anymore, it's probably down here now. So we do that, we end up grabbing liquidity in this area, and that's all it took to rotate it. So you didn't need to try and get a fill all the way up here in the 355s. I mean, the 355 fill would have been nice. Maybe I should have had some size set for there anyways, but I should have also had some size set for this little area right here when we grab liquidity off of this little swing high here, and that's what did us in. Of course, this could have also been the one that broke down, but the fact that it didn't meant that the new liquidity level was here and it wasn't all the way up here anymore, because like once we see this break higher and reject, everybody's going to realize that they can risk off of this now. People are going to think they can risk off of this because that's where we had a rejection. But over here, we don't have that yet because like there's no prior history of seeing a rejection area in here. So yeah. And I just didn't think about it at the time. It was kind of a stupid thing for me not to try and get a fill over here in like the 3/4s. So, and yeah, this just ended up fading for the rest of the day. I thought 0.2 would end up being, I thought this 0.2 fill would have been ambitious, but no, it kept going. And this is often the case as well with midday runners like these that go super overextended. They will fade way cleaner than the ones that gap up. So, yeah. And that's really about it we had for today. There wasn't a whole lot else going on. Let's see here. Nothing else during the intraday. TRNR did some stuff in the pre-market. I saw that. I didn't really trade it or analyze it, so I won't go over it. And we had a lot of like larger caps. There were a lot of like mid-large caps actually on my scan this morning. We had a trio of stocks this morning. It was Bros, Lyft, and what was the third one? App. These guys here all did very similar price action near the open off of incredible earnings. Although not crazy action in the small caps world. So, oh yeah, Bonsai also did a move in pre-market as well. Again, didn't analyze it though because it was done by the open, and that was about it. So, yep, ended up coming out green. No losing trades, I guess, and just the WBUY trade and this one right here, which it was a fat shame I didn't get to trade this one because this NMHI trade was like it was such a clean win. So. But it is what it is. There'll be more of these to come. These midday runners, they happen once every other day or so. You get something like this where it's super overextended and does a clean fade. So looking forward to that whenever it happens again. So yeah, and that's all. Thanks.